Toon Disney holds a special place in my heart. Premiering in 1998, the channel featured a number of highly entertaining original shows, but was more well known as a hub for animated Disney spin-off series, taking characters from the company's classic movies and thrusting them into new, exciting adventures. It was a thrill to further explore the lives of these beloved characters, and was largely the focal point of the channel, but not the only aspect that kept viewers engaged. Disney also purchased leasing rights to cartoons that had debuted on other channels, and the variety that culminated was exceptional, showcasing cartoons that may have been unfamiliar to viewers due to not having been on TV in years or never before aired on American television. While being faced with a show you haven't heard of could be enough reason to change the channel, it was the prospect that watching this unknown product for even just a few minutes might be enough to introduce you to your new favorite show that kept kids rooted to their television screens. And though wading into these uncharted territories was anything but a certainty, it's the times this patience paid off that remain ingrained. A mere 30 minutes or so of watching a new cartoon turned into a lifetime of passion and memories for these worlds and characters. No show quite captures that joyous feeling of discovery for me like Blazing Dragons. Originally airing from 1996 to 1998 on Canadian television network Teletoon, the show followed the Knights of the Square Table, made up entirely of bumbling anthropomorphic dragons, as they protect the kingdom of Camelhot from the evil human Count Geoffrey. The show parodied various facets of medieval times, having the characters embark on quests to gather historical relics and encountering mythic and legendary figures of the period along their travels. It had more than its fair share of slapstick and silliness, but its true genius lied in its writing, focusing on its ensemble cast and the relationships between them, resulting in a character-driven show inspired by its direct connection to the British comedy group Monty Python. But even in its brilliance, it was not immune to its own challenges, leading to a dramatic overhaul of the show in its second season, changing everything from the art style to the cast and its comedic emphasis, and is one of the most drastic changes I've ever seen a cartoon go through from one year to the next. Different doesn't necessarily mean bad though. Did the changes end up helping to enhance its legacy, or was it a contributing factor to the show's eventual demise? It may not be considered the greatest cartoon of all time, but it should be considered the standard for what a great cartoon should strive to be. Let's look at the cartoon that sets Funny Bones ablaze. This is Blazing Dragons. The creation of Blazing Dragons comes from an unexpected source, Terry Jones. While the name may not elicit a distinct reaction on its own, his work certainly does, as he was a founding member of Monty Python and directed the group's 3 cinematic releases, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Life of Brian, and The Meaning of Life. Jones was not only a comedic genius, but an Oxford graduate as well, where he graduated with a degree in English and a passion for medieval history, parlaying into him writing numerous books and television documentaries on the subject. So a comedic period piece centered around incompetent dragons in Arthurian legend seems like a would-be passion project, but it seems that it was little more than a passing idea, as he recalled in a 2004 interview. "I've never really watched Blazing Dragons. I came up with the idea during a drunken lunch, I think. I was never able to develop the idea because I was too involved doing something else." Perhaps not as glamorous a conception as one would imagine, but certainly far from being the first to be cooked up with little thought. The show's development would fall into the hands of Jones's friend Gavin Scott, who would go on to write the movies The Borrowers and Small Soldiers, and would be directed by Larry Jacobs, an animation industry veteran who had directed on cartoons including Beetlejuice and The Magic School Bus. And to further prove Jones's hands-off approach to the project, Jacobs recounts that after a cursory conversation between the two, Jones's response was essentially, "Cheerio and have some fun." Getting into the cartoon itself, starting with the theme song, it's an absolute standout. outlining what the show is about through its lyrics, while also giving a glimpse into the characters' personas through the scene playing underneath. It's both catchy and funny on two separate levels, showing the goofy, oblivious dragon knights having a merry time, singing of their honorable way of life, while the villainous Count Geoffrey's kidnapping of the Dragon Queen backfires is comic gold right from the start. It's an upbeat melody with charming lyrics that aren't over-the-top wacky, and I still sing the line, "That doesn't rhyme, that's okay, we're gonna sing it anyway," in a British accent every time. The show ran in a 30-minute time slot, and this worked in its favor greatly, as it was centered around its characters, with the plot serving to highlight their reactions to the events around them. This isn't to say storylines wouldn't be integral to the episode, but they were more avenues to get the characters' responses to the situations, which is where the comedy was at its best. Quests pertaining to send-offs of ancient artifacts, such as the Holy Quail and Excalibur, were commonplace, but the way these characters would quibble to find a solution was the comedic driving force, and would only be successful with a foolhardy but likable group. The cast may have been extensive, but was one for the ages. Starting with the main protagonist, Flicker. Part-time inventor and full-time squire, he's a knight in training, following the dragon's code of chivalry to a T, in hopes of someday becoming a knight. He's a bit nervous, but good-hearted, and in order to someday achieve his goal, he must train as a companion under Sir Lounge-a-Lot, the lazy, cowardly, brash, greedy, gluttonous knight. He often takes credit for Flicker's ideas and successes, to which he's unjustly rewarded for, mostly due to everyone's general indifference to Flicker's existence. What he does do well is display a flair for the dramatic, spinning stories of even the most mundane tasks into epic tales. The kingdom of Camelhot is ruled by the elderly King Allfire, whose glory days are long past, but continues to lead his kingdom and the knights. He's married to, and often exasperated by, his wife, Queen Griddle, the overdramatic, melodramatic, short-tempered second-in-command. She loves attention, especially from other men, and wants things done her way. She has no shame when she cries and complains, and has the fiercest temper of all the dragons. There's Princess Flame, the king's daughter and stepdaughter to Queen Griddle. She's bound to her royal duties, but is sharply intelligent and independent, and has a secret romantic bond with Flicker. Blaze, the flamboyant knight, he loves fashion and the finer things in life. He's the son of Queen Griddle, and is widely believed to only be a knight due to nepotism. Sir Bernevere, the elder Scottish knight, and the book-smart one of the group. His accent makes him hard to understand, but he's arguably the most noble of the knights. Sir Camelhot, the biggest, most physically imposing knight, and Sir Hotbreath, a shorter, improper knight. Rounding out the rest of the dragons are the minstrel, who pops up throughout the episodes moving scenes along, and Cinder and Clinker, the two-headed dragon jester with opposite personalities. One is deadpan, one is goofy, but they both lack a proper funny bone. On the side of evil, we have the humans, starting with Count Geoffrey, oppressor par excellence of the poor and weak. He's obsessed with taking over Camelhot, though his schemes often blow up in his face, no thanks in part to his inept knights, number 1, 2, and 3. He does have the wizard Merle in his corner, a magician for hire, but she's more interested in serving her own needs rather than the Count's. It's a funny twist to have these dragons being plotted against by humans, who shouldn't be a threat in the slightest, but it's the dragon's own scattered-brainness which leaves them susceptible to defeat, and makes it feel like a level playing field that the heroes are just as dim-witted at times as the villains. With the strong foundation set, the key would be in how the show would go about its humor. As mentioned before, it's a character-centric comedy, meaning the show revolves around the specific characters and the things that happen to them, rather than a plot-driven comedy, which focuses on the situation and the jokes made about it by the characters. The plots are still central, but it's how they bring out the characters' complex relationships that make the show truly special. Flicker, the central protagonist, is the most sensible resident in the whole kingdom, but is largely ignored due to his lowly status. Ignored by everyone except Princess Flame, who has a burgeoning secret romance with him. Flicker is Lancelot's squire, but is treated more as a servant and whipping boy than a knight in training. Lancelot uses him to do his bidding in order to curry favor from the king and queen, so that he may maintain his relaxed yet exuberant lifestyle. The princess is always striving to be more than just her title, while the other knights are more than happy to coast off of theirs. It's dynamics like these that make the intermixing of characters one of the best parts of the show, and as a result, the jokes are hilarious. In one scene, Lancelot is proclaiming his bravery, but when a potential monster is in their midst, he hides behind Flicker and shrieks, "Here, take the little one, his meat is still marinating in baby fat." When one of the evil knights captures Princess Flame and asks her to lead him to the dungeon so he can lock her up, after walking for a while, he asks her, "You're not trying to get me lost or anything, are you?" And she responds, "Nope." And he says, "Okay." His density is special in the silliest way. He's bright enough to realize he may be getting hoodwinked, but not smart enough where he trusts that she's being honest. It's a funny logical or illogical joke. An intelligent comedy like this permeates throughout the show. There's even a few meta-influence jokes thrown throughout. The wizard Merle has an idea for Jeffrey to sneak into Camelhot, and says she got the idea from a movie she saw 800 years in the future. To which Jeffrey asks, "What's a movie?" One episode has Count Jeffrey attempting to come up with a plot, and maliciously comments that he has a plan. No details or motive yet, just a plan. There is an abundance of sincerely superb lines. One of my personal favorites being when the dragons order a pizza, and when they open the door to see that a baby has been left at the castle drawbridge, Lancelot annoyedly comments, "They always get our order wrong." There are more than just lines that bring in the laughs though. Visual jokes such as Stonehenge being used as the dragon's event calendar, and Lancelot giving the queen a miniature version of it, which is their equivalent of a desk calendar, is comedy gold. Flicker and Flame's secret romance, impeded mostly by his, at times, obliviousness, and other times by his commitment to knight's training, makes for funny frustrations from both parties. There's so many different types of comedy that are written and executed expertly, and because the show is able to maintain that high level of comedic consistency, it makes these half-hour episodes feel like they're an hour long in the best possible way. With the first season of 13 episodes coming to a close, the show seemed primed to take off. There didn't appear to be any learning curve with the writing, as is often the case, with the first episode as strong as the last, and the future seemed bright for Blazing Dragons. Quality, though, isn't always the measuring factor of success. As Jacobs would explain, the show did well enough in the UK, well enough to get a second season, but was still having trouble breaking through in North America. Though it had a promising bedrock to build upon, the show would undergo significant changes heading into the second season. The biggest change going into season 2 would be how the 30-minute runtime would be split up into two, roughly 12-minute episodes. A choice made by director Larry Jacobs in the hopes of getting more eyes on the show. I do understand the reasoning behind this decision. When looking for a way to increase viewership, changing formats and cutting costs are the obvious first steps. Having said that, the most apparent change to the show is the visuals. The colors are more pronounced, but all the characters are now drawn with a thin black outline. This animation style used in an effort to save money overall. The alteration isn't a negative, and if this were the singular look across both seasons, this alteration isn't a negative, but I am more partial to the more conventional look of the first season. The change of art helped usher in a soft reboot of sorts, beginning with the cast. Count Geoffrey experienced the most radical changes to his character. In the inaugural episode of the second season, aptly titled A Killer Makeover, Count Geoffrey goes through an in-universe and behind-the-scenes transformation. On screen, the explanation for his new look is that he wants to be more evil, so he gets a makeover, ditching his old purple coat of armor, exchanging it with a new one, and a dragon skull on his head to boot. A fun detail that does make him look a bit more threatening, and that includes his voice, which is changed behind the scenes to a new voice actor. His voice, like his redesign, isn't bad at all, but I still prefer the original actor's interpretation of the pathetic Count rather than the dastardly delinquent. Princess Flame goes through her own reboot as well, now having hair, and it does help to make her stand out a bit more, but it all seems for naught, as she's all but removed from the show, making sparing appearances in the second season's 13 episodes, which is unfortunate. She was one of the more grounded characters, and a good foil to the wackier dragons. She gets the better end of the deal though, compared to Sirs Camelhot and Hot Breath, who have been removed from the show completely. To be fair, they were the most expendable of the group, not having as clear-cut personalities as the other knights, but it still feels like a loss to downsize the group. Following the subtraction of characters and the shortening of episodes, the comedy in turn was affected as well. As stated by Season 2 writer Erica Strobel, I think that some people on the creative team felt that the shows were too long and dragged out in the half-hour format. While she was promoted to story editor for the second season, she would have preferred continuing with the original format. You can explore character more in a half hour, whereas 11 minutes forces you just to write back-to-back gags and plot. I've always preferred character stories to action stories. The second season was exhausting to write for this reason. The shift in comedy is clear, reversing the first season's trend of character-first stories, now focusing on plot-driven episodes, following the dragons as they visit new locales and encounter historical and mythological figures such as Cupid and the Sandman. It is fun to see them travel, but does come off as somewhat gimmicky, almost feeling like these famous folks they encounter are special guests that are splitting the episodes with the dragons. It's admittedly jarring, and feels like it's taking away from what made the show so likable, the main crew. And it's a pity, because that's the greatest strength of the show, and taking that away starts to make it feel like just any other cartoon. Still, their hijinks are entertaining, and if slapstick and physical comedy is a more captivating brand of humor to somebody, I would recommend this season to them. For how inconsequential the creation of Blazing Dragons was to its creator, its lifespan was a short, yet involved one. Ending in 1998 after 26 30-minute episodes, the show aired on Toon Disney from 1998 to 2002, but even then, failed to catch on in any larger way. There was a video game adaptation for the PlayStation, very loosely based on the show, but is more well known for its box art as much as its story or gameplay. Why Blazing Dragons didn't catch on is a simple question without any discernible answers. The episode length from the first season may have been too long to keep viewers' attention, but the shorter second season episodes didn't seem to do much to remedy that problem. Maybe it was something to do with the characters, but reducing their numbers and changing their looks, redoing the art style, none of it helped in any meaningful way. The questions surrounding the legacy of Blazing Dragons shouldn't be why, but what. What should happen with the franchise going forward? I think in this world of cartoons, where everything is being relaunched and reimagined for a modern audience, giving second lives to shows that maybe were ahead of their time or weren't able to achieve their full potential for any number of reasons wouldn't be a bad option. But what I would recommend is for people to watch the original. A reboot would be a fine route, but the original show's first season is so tightly written, it's worth going back to it as is, being just as entertaining today as the day it first aired. And I'd even recommend watching the second season just with adjusted expectations for what those episodes set out to do. Blazing Dragons may long be past the era it aired, but it still has the power to enamor with its fun backdrop, memorable characters, and wonderfully timeless comedy. And hopefully, someone will be inspired to seek it out for themselves and get that same exciting feeling of discovery I got all those years ago.